The morgue. Midnight. Two bodies on two separate tables lay covered by white sheets. And then suddenly, one of the bodies under one of the sheets sat up. The sheet dropped away to reveal an old man with long, disheveled hair, a battered, weather-beaten face, now blanched white in death, and a thin, emaciated body. The disheveled man surveyed his surroundings with his dark, glaring eyes, and then he slid from his perch and staggered across to the other table, where he pulled back the sheet covering the other body, which he then slapped hard across the face. The other body, the other man, opened its eyes. His eyes. The second body was that of a man of the same age as the disheveled man, but this man's appearance was more middle-aged than elderly. He had a large, well-nourished body, a handsome, boyish face, and a full head of hair, which had remained blonde. He opened a pair of bright blue eyes, squinting in the semi-darkness, and in a loud voice said, "Who hit me?" "I did," the disheveled man said quietly. "And who the hell are you?" the blond man demanded. "Don't you recognize me?" The blond man looked around in bewilderment, the blue eyes wide with amazement. "What is this place?" "The morgue." "The morgue?" "Yep. We're dead." "Dead? That's impossible," the blond man sputtered. "How can we be talking if we're dead?" Cause some things transcend death," the disheveled man said. "Some things transcend death, like hate." "Hate? Bob?" "How do you know my name?" the blond man barked. "Don't you recognize me, Bob?" the disheveled man repeated. "No." "It's Jesse." "Who?" "Jesse Griner." "Who?" "Look, Bub, do I really know you?" "Intimately." "Where from? We grew up together," Jesse said, interrupting him. Bob stared closely at him for a moment. "Oh, Jesse." "Yes. Oh, Jesse." "I heard you were on Skid Row," Bob said before laughing. "Back to your roots, eh?" Jesse stared at him coldly and eventually replied, "Yes, back to my humble roots." Bob was still laughing. Nancy told me you proposed to her." Yes, I did. But she wouldn't have me," Jesse said quietly. "As if she would have married a loser like you. Water seeks its own level, you know." "I'm not entirely certain of that," Jesse said. "Well, I am," Bob concluded, a smug smile on his broad, handsome face. "When she turned me down," Jesse said, speaking as if to himself alone. "When she turned me down, I went off the rails. I gave up on school and took to drinking and partying. There just didn't seem much point in continuing, in getting a degree, without Nancy. I really loved her. Really, really loved her. Had always loved her." Bob had sat up on his table to sit facing Jesse. Suddenly, he shot forth an accusatory finger. "Didn't you ask me for a job once?" Jesse nodded his shaggy head. It was in the mailroom. I'd been out of work a long time. A very long time. It was my last chance to get back on my feet again, to find some stability in my life. But you turned me down. Bob smirked and now shook his head. How could I have hired you? Your collar was frayed, and your shoes, they were virtually falling apart. I'd been out of work for over a year, Jesse cried. My company had a certain image to maintain, Bob said. Standards. Is that why you hired your fool of a nephew instead? Bob shrugged. It made my sister happy. All in the family, eh? I would have worked really hard for you, Bob. It really was my last chance. I hit the skids after that. Ended up homeless. He looked around the interior of the morgue and then added, and ended up here. Huh. And you wonder why Nancy married me, Bob said smugly. Is that why you cheated on her? Repeatedly? Bob slid off the table and began to walk towards the door. It's not my habit to discuss my personal affairs with bums, he said curtly. Jesse watched him go, and as he got close to the door said, You can't get out. Nonsense. But when he turned the doorknob to open the door, nothing happened. What the hell? Bob muttered. You can't leave, Jesse said calmly. You're dead. If I'm dead, how is it I'm walking around? How is it I'm talking to you? Bob shouted. Because the power of hate can transcend even death, Jesse said. And I hate you for what you did to Nancy. Quit talking about my wife, you filthy bum, Bob yelled. She told me all about it, Jesse yelled back. She saw me on the street, then took me into a nearby Tim Hortons, and for 2 hours poured out her heart to me about your cruelty and selfishness. And you know what? You know what? She kept repeating, I should have married you, Jesse. I should have married you. You loved me, Jesse. You loved me. That's a lie, Bob screamed, his voice choking with rage. Is it? Jesse retorted. Are you telling me you never cheated on her? I'm not discussing it with a loser like you. And a month later, Nancy was dead, Jesse said in a voice choked with emotion. A suicide. The finest woman in the world. And she killed herself. Because of you. I don't see that any of this is any of your damn business, Bob said, his voice beginning to sound a trifle bored. I resolved to die myself when I learned that Nancy was dead, Jesse continued. But first I had a job to do, a task to perform, a final task. Bob wasn't listening. Am I really dead? Yes. How did it happen? Jesse reached out and took Bob's arm. Come, I'll show you. Bob resisted at first, but after a moment, he went along with Jesse. In a darkened corner of the morgue was a full-length mirror. The two men stood before it naked, hardly an inspiring sight. Jesse was still talking as he hunted for the nearest light switch. I stole a carving knife from a big box store. Now where is that damn light switch? I'm having a hard time seeing. Maybe because I'm dead. Anyway, I waited for you to get home last night and... Oh, here it is. Here's the switch. Jesse flicked on the overhead fluorescent lights, and Bob screamed, for the bright light had revealed a gaping hole on the left side of his broad chest. You know, Bob, I would have sworn you didn't have a heart. But you did. You did have a heart. Till I cut it out and ate it. The moral of the story? Who says Warren doesn't have a heart? He does. He keeps it in a jar on his desk. If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the Night Floaters, werewolves, and the Black-Eyed Children. So again, please consider subscribing. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,500 subs in 2022. Till midnight. Cheers. Pictures used in today's video, courtesy of Pix here, that's PX here, while the music was the haunting and atmospheric aftermath by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod. Perfect music for the morgue at midnight.